Hello everyone and welcome to this webinar about metamorphosis. My name is Hidde and over here is my colleague Nick.
Hello.
And today we would like to tell you more about the metamorphosis philosophy. This webinar is divided into two parts. The first part will be about the problem. So we will explain why we have started this project. And the second part will be about the project itself, about the approach, about the participants. And the webinar will take 1 hour, and there will be room for discussion as well. And there is a chat function in the webinar tool in Zoom. So if you've got a question, please ask it to us. We will collect all questions and answer them. And the Metamorphosis project is funded by the European Union. So you can also see the logo on the slide. And it's one of the Civitas projects. So please, if you've got questions, ask them in the chat or in the Q&A button. Let's see. But why are we having this webinar? That's because we want to tell you more about the project, because it's a very important topic. It's about designing and redesigning child-friendly neighborhoods. And we hope to learn you more about this topic and about the project. And at the end of the webinar, we will link to the social media accounts and the website. So if you're interested, feel free to visit the website and the social media channels to learn more about the project.
Okay, hi. So we are in a situation right now that according to the UN, we are now with 7.6 billion people on this planet. Within 2050, so that's only like 30 years, we have 9.8 billion people. So we have more people and they also will live more in cities. Right now, around 55% of them lives in cities, and it will be around 70 until the time of 2050. So that means more people living in denser populated cities with less space for other options. So that also means that you have a lot of kids that are not that much place for anymore in the city. You have more building for cars, more for housing, and less place for them to play. It brings us to our next problem. That according to UNICEF, that one of those ongoing consequences of this rapid urbanization is that for you like planners and urban designers, it will be quite a big issue to still build cities for children as a skill. Like mostly we build for cars, we build for adults, but also the kids over there have just the same rights as every other citizen. They have their opportunity to live in a safe city. And this has some causes that we have problems with building for them. One of them is this. Around the second half of the last century, people could afford more cars because they became much cheaper. So this increase in vehicle ownership also resulted in a demand for more transportation measures for the logistic routes to travel around. So we started building more for cars instead of for kids, more automobile-oriented planning. And money, this is really expensive, so the money that you invest in these topics, in building for cars, you can't really invest that much in public transport or in cycle lanes. And that's why you see in a whole lot of cities around the world that the infrastructure for cars is still quite okay. If you go for like public transport and for bicycles and for walking, the options are much less. So that also means that they become much less pleasant. In that way, people who have the money will prefer to buy a car because your options are not that pleasant. So you also have a reduction in other travel options, and this also decreases the amount of investment that is invested in those other options, like a metro or a bus, because less people are using them, and only the people who end up using them are the people who can afford cars in the end. So alternative modes are stigmatized. So public transport for poor people. People ride a bike, you can't afford a car. So it also becomes like a status symbol. A car is part of your reputation and who you are. And that's how a lot of people see it, and it becomes a bigger part of your life. So people have more cars, people with money have more cars. They start building suburbs outside of the city because it became possible to work in one place and live in the other. And you could travel like to have a very different places every day. So the people who couldn't afford it end up in a city center, which less facilities and there's less money invested in them because there's more money invested in the infrastructure for the cars. So it enforces automobile-oriented land use planning again. So there's less space for other facilities. If you have more cars, you also need to park them somewhere. So there are generous parking supplies. You need twice as many parking spots at least for every car you have in the country. And also more dispersed development patterns. So people start to live in different places, like the suburbs. And if you have less dense cities, the investment in public transport starts to become a bigger challenge because less people use them like in suburbs. If you look at America, that's a perfect example of how they end up with this problem. Okay, and Hidde will tell you a bit more about the political consequences.
Yes, so there are clearly some challenges regarding designing child-friendly neighborhoods. But what about the children? Because the aim of this project is on children. Well, as you can see on this illustration, children want to go outside. They want to play, have fun. But is that still possible? Well, maybe. But many parents bring their kids to school by car. And they need parking places to bring their children because they need to park somewhere, drop off their kids, and drive to work or somewhere else. And that has a very big effect on the built environment. Because if you look around the school, you can see many parking places, there are roads, and there are no places where children can go, where they can play, where they can have fun. And then another very important stakeholder, the policymakers and the decision makers. Because the voice of the kids does not reach the policymakers, or it's very difficult. The children can't vote for the favorite politician, but the parents can. And the parents need parking spots close to the school because they need to park. So that's also one very important part of the Metamorphosis project, to let the children share their voice with the politicians. And then research, because we as a Breda University of Applied Sciences, of course, need to tell something about research. This topic is quite new to design neighborhoods for children. So that's also why more research is needed. And that's also part of the Metamorphosis project. So to research which measures would affect or reach the goal the best way. And one nice example, because we're researching this topic and children are involved in the research, we need ethical approval. And that means that you're allowed to involve children in your research. And it already took us like half a year to get this approval. So that shows how new and difficult this topic is.
Yeah, even though it's a European project designed for kids, and then if it's even very hard for us to get ethical approval, imagine how it is for other research or commercially funded research.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And another nice example, also students are involved in this project. For instance, in order to organize this webinar, internship students have helped us. And right now there's a big classroom filled with students who are joining this webinar. So that's also how we want to share the knowledge of the project with others. And you, of course, the watchers.
Because in the end, like you have parents just want their kids to be safe and want to live in a safe area. And one of the biggest fear of a parent, I think every parent will know, is that something happens to their kids. The things that they're most afraid of is, could you go to the next slide today?
Of course.
Thank you. Is stranger danger and danger traffic situation and heavy traffic. So stranger danger, a lot of people are afraid of it, like your daughter can travel after dark by herself. It's a very scary big thing, but it doesn't happen very often. Like the amount of percentages that you actually encounter in a stranger is really small. And there's also it's quite hard to do some policy and urban planning stuff about it. But on the car dependency, we can do something. So parents are afraid something happens to their kids. Parents are afraid something happens to their kids, so they stay more at home. They play more video games, even though they want outside to play. Like parents have to bring them in quite some places to the playground, and they can play in the garden. There's quite some literature about it, like the bubble wrap gardens. You can play around in your own safe space, but outside on the street it doesn't happen that often as it used to happen 20 years ago. One of the results is that kids get sadder, sicker, and fatter because they don't move that much anymore.
And why would we still use the car to bring our children to school? Well, the answer is quite easy, because many cities have been designed for the car and not for the children. So, for instance, if you need to bring your child to school, then you need to travel to work by car. You need to go grocery shopping. You need to bring your kids to their sporting activities by car. So by redesigning the cities in a child-friendly neighborhood, cars are less needed. And of course, using the car has some very negative effects, which we will tell you more about later on. But first, an overview of what we have just discussed. More and more people start living in cities, and also the car ownership is increasing. So if you keep going on this way, cities won't be child-friendly. They will be car-oriented, there will be congestion, better air quality. And is that what we want? No, of course not. I think that's an easy answer as well. And that's why we need to involve children in a project like this, to get to know what they want and how, so we can learn how we need to design a child-friendly neighborhood. Because we cannot do this without the opinion of children.
Yeah, and the current situation of driving your kids around to different locations because cities are not built on a scale that kids can travel on their own. That's an ambulance. We also have them in the Netherlands. Has some implications on their kids. And we looked at research, and this is mostly research from Malone. And 5 topics are really supporting out, like, we have to do something about it. And we go into depth with them, like one at a time. So first you have like your environmental competence. Just like you have to learn how to read and how to write, you have to practice. You have to try how to do it. Well, you also have like a thing of environmental competence. Like the more you get outside, the more you get in like new situations that you don't know anything about. The more you learn about them and learn how to deal with them. And now we live in a quite safe area. Like you can go to your work, buy your car in your own private space in the public area to your house. You don't really have to you can order in groceries, you can order in every stuff that you want. You don't really have to have that much social contact anymore. And if you don't practice it, it becomes harder. And that's could be one of the reasons why you have so much social anxiety right now, or people who are afraid to go to big public gatherings because they're just not used to it anymore and don't practice it. The environmental competence. Another topic is the self-work efficacy. Like most of you students start to live on your own, like if you go studying. If you do that, you get to know yourself, like you handle stuff that sometimes when you live with your parents, do with your parents. And by finding out new stuff on your own, just like kids, playing outside, doing stuff, do also stuff that parents don't have to know about, is really important for people to develop their own sense of thinking, their own self-worth and self-efficacy.
But also a sense of purpose. If children can't play outside, have fun together, they might become anxious, experience more stress. So it's very important for children to be able to go outside. Resilience. Sometimes when you, as a small kid, you play outside, you play a soccer match, and you hit the ball very hard, and it might hit a window, and the window breaks. As a child, you will learn how to solve problems like this. So it's very important to interact with others, learn how to solve a problem. And also the social competence. If you're always in your own house and you don't interact with others, it might become very difficult when you go outside to interact with others. So it's a very big issue that many children stay inside and don't play outside, have fun together, but maybe go behind a computer and play a video game. So these are some very important topics, and we hope to improve these topics with the Metamorphosis project.
So we have like a situation that's damaging children. And what we as Metamorphosis want to do about it is to develop and implement bottom-up measures with kids, thought about by kids, to achieve lasting behavioral change. So a lot of the measures are about soft measures, changing behavior of people to create child-friendlier neighborhoods in the end. We don't do that alone here in Breda. We have like some partners to help us with it. So we work in 7 cities: Southampton, Tilburg, Munich, Zurich, Graz, and Alba-Julia. And Merano. So we work on our own in Tilburg right now. We implement measures, we evaluate them. We do that according to the same thing as in all the other different cities. And like we have in the first week of December, we come together, we evaluate and talk with each other, learn from each other to get it to the next level. And this is very interesting because now you can also see things that could work in the Netherlands but couldn't work in Alba-Julia or the other way around. And just like this European context, and especially if it's about soft measures also involve like cultural stuff, it's very interesting to see how different cultures work together to find new solutions to a very big problem. But yeah, what's a child-friendly city in the end? Like there's not really a clear definition of it because a lot of scientific papers use different things, but they mostly rally around topics like this, and it's also the stuff that we use in our research. So we work with car-free zones, lots of social interaction, opportunities for risk-taking, a maximum use of space, also to have it as diverse as possible, get it multi-purpose, a lot of green space and close to home, so cities developed on a children's scale. In that way, we look at what is a child-friendly city. This is it according to our perspective. Like in discussion, we're very interesting to know, like if you guys have other opinions of it, of like different additions that you think should be implemented in it. And if you have them, please let us know, write them down, and we will work with it in discussion. Because in the end, we all prefer to live like in an environment where everyone is safe, where people can just go out and play outside, a green space. And that's also one of the reasons that a lot of parents who have the money move outside of a city as soon as they have kids, because they would like them to play in their garden, to be able to be outside, them to be safe. And I think that's a very understandable thing. And also I think that we should be able to offer people also in cities. And there's also a very clear business case in that. It's because people who have kids and have the money to move outside are often quite people who work like we both have jobs, we both earn money, and also kids are damn expensive. So they also spend a lot of money. And if you spend more money in the city, that's one of the best things that can happen to a city because it enforces business, it offers opportunity for higher taxes, to earn more money and to invest it in the public area as well. So there's quite a big business case for cities as well to focus on parents who try to move outside of the city, but also make cities as pleasant for them as it would be to live outside in a village.
And although this is a webinar, we also want to look for some interaction with you, the viewers. And that's why we will show a few questions, and we will ask the universities, because also some universities are watching, to ask their students how they feel about the questions. And we will do the same here in this room. So please use a few minutes to collect the answers, and you can post your answers in the chat box or in the Q&A box. So the first question: which stakeholders need to be involved in order to create child-friendly neighborhoods, in your opinion? So who do we need to achieve this goal of child-friendly neighborhoods? That's a very important question, because of course we can't do this alone within the project. So please ask your students, and if you've got any answers, share them with us, and we will ask our students as well.
Yes, I would first like to answer two of the questions that are given in the chat box. The first ones are all the sources that we use in this webinar available. Yes, they are. I've collected them and we'll send them after the webinar to everyone and you can look them up. There's some very interesting literature in that. So please look at it. And another thing is where we are right now. And that's quite an interesting thing with a webinar. It could be everywhere in the world. But we are in Breda at Breda University of Applied Science. And we also work at the same time in 3 different time zones in India, Dresden, Southampton. Yeah, I hope this answers your question. If you have any more questions, please ask them again and I will happily answer them.
And this webinar will also be recorded. So of course, everyone is trying to attend, but if someone cannot make it, please share the link with them, which we will send later on. But first, the question, how can we achieve this goal? What do we need to design child-friendly neighborhoods? We will ask you to write it down on a paper or on your laptop, and we will collect the answers, just to get an idea.
I also would like to know from our online viewers if the audio is right, if the camera is working, if the presentation is working. This is a pilot, so if you have anything that could improve, please let us know, because we also have to give 6 other ones. So please give us your thoughts.
We've already received a very interesting answer. Thank you, Thomas, for sharing. He says, we need children. That's a very interesting answer. Of course, we need children. We can't do it without them. I'm very happy that you're mentioning this, because it's very easy to overlook them. So thank you for sharing.
That's a lot of interesting answers. So we have like municipalities, and we have plenty of them. We work with 7 municipalities in this program, so we completely agree with you. Also kids and parents, the end users of our measures in the end. We happily say that as well, because they're also quite involved in the project, and we'll tell you a bit more about it in the second half of the presentation, which focuses more on Metamorphosis as a whole. And here I have a very interesting graph actually from the stakeholders. So at the top level, we have the government. Let's see if our viewers can see it. Does it work? So we have like on 2 branches, municipalities, the government, uni research, parents, and kids. And the uni research are focused on kids, and as well as the parents, they're both involved, as well as in research as in the implementation side. It's great. We totally agree with that.
And there are some more answers. We need the police. Interesting one, because if we don't check if everything is working as we planned, people might as well use their car around the school or do some things which we would rather not like to see. Local opinions, non-governmental organizations. So it's not only up to the city planners and the government, but also up to maybe like a local hairdresser, a community. So it's good to involve all kinds of stakeholders.
I'm also quite curious, who thought of the police? Do you raise a hand? Yeah. Could you come up front and explain a bit more about it? No? Yeah, of course, we need some law enforcement. That's a very interesting part of it. And also professionals. Makes sense. We need professionals as well. Because if you have a lot of top-down planning and then you look up like professionals, just think of everything that's going to happen with no connection with the end users. But we try to do that the other way around, from bottom up to a higher level. But then still, you need like professionals. You first get the information from the end users, you go up, you scale up, and then you end up with the professionals trying to work with the content provided by the end users. Thank you.
And some more answers are coming in via the chat. Let's see. Politicians, children, parents, guardians, schools, local authorities, infrastructure providers, architects as well, because they are the ones that can design the built environment. Thank you for sharing again.
Are there any people who don't need this project? That's also a very interesting one. The car manufacturer. Yes, we need less of them. Or maybe like cars who plan around for kids, like they can play outside and just stop and go very slow and play streets where they are playing. Maybe should be a bigger focus on that. We'll write to Tesla.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's a second question for the discussion. Let's see. What do you consider the biggest benefit of child-friendly neighborhoods? And you could answer that question from several perspectives, from the children point of view, maybe from a city planner point of view. So what are the biggest benefits of a child-friendly neighborhood? Please again use the chat to share your ideas about this.
We also have a question from Thomas. Like, how can we see what is answered and who is participating? Yeah, we will tell you. Because we have the chat box, and there are some. We have like 2 students working over there to collect the answers and give them the questions and give them to us. And then we discuss it here live. But to don't have the chaos, we had a central point to collect them. If you would like them, please let us know, and we will tell you the answers after the webinar and send you an email. Thank you, Thomas.
So we have received another answer via the chat. So the biggest benefit would be an improved amenity and environment for all, and increased road safety. So benefits could be safety and the environment for everyone.
Yeah, and
that's interesting. So if you design it for a child, from a child perspective, it could benefit all. That's also the main idea behind the project. By designing child-friendly neighborhoods, all will benefit. So it's not just for the children, and that's very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, because also old people could very well benefit from public spaces much safer. They don't have to pay that much attention to cars, where they can just walk around a bit slower probably than kids, but still very safe. And that's a very important topic of this project. Like, if it works for kids, the weakest link in the society chain in the city, it works for everyone.
And some more answers are coming in. They are written on the flip over. Safety could be the biggest benefit. Health, stronger community, mental health, happy people, and one is written down right now, less traffic. So as you can see, there are many topics who could benefit from this project and from child-friendly neighborhoods in general. So thank you all for sharing. We are collecting the last benefits right now. More green is one of the other answers.
And it looks really nice, like all the topics on that flip over are benefits for everyone. Everybody, I think everybody would like the stuff that's written down over there. So it's quite a good case to work in child-friendly cities, isn't it?
It sounds like the perfect city if you would ask me. Happy people, more green, nice environment, good mental health.
Stronger communities.
You can't be against this. And more people outside. And this was the last question for this part of the discussion. At the end of the webinar, there will be room for more discussion. So thank you all for sharing the information. When we will send you the link with to the recording of this webinar, we will also share a picture of the answers which we have collected. So thank you. And now the Metamorphosis solution. We have seen some interesting benefits and we now know who to work with. But the Metamorphosis solution, what is it about? It's about developing bottom up, so with the children, soft measures to achieve lasting behavioral change, to make cities more child-friendly and build the capacity to scale up. So also all the information which we are gathering within this project will be shared with other cities, other partners, but we will tell you more about it.
So yeah, the first part was about why we need this project. We also saw in the discussion that there are a lot of benefits to this project. But now we're going to tell you about the actual project, like what are we actually doing. So this is it basically, just 7 steps. We have a lot of partners working together and we divided the project in 7 steps. The first overall part is management. Then you have like the user involvement and the analysis. So get together with the end users, get some great ideas. Then think of innovative concepts, so new ways of dealing with stuff. Because if you do everything that's already been done, then it's not really a research project, and it's just showing or trying to understand like what did we research in the past, would it work again? And then we have implementation trials. With every innovative concept, you have to try it, because if it's innovative, it could be very good, very bad, or something in the middle. So you need to test it to know if it's actually good. Then we work on capacity building, just to train people to do the same. And then we monitor, evaluate, and quality assurance. That's like what we do over the entire project to see if it actually works. And then the last step is communication and dissemination. That's just spreading the word, getting more information out there for people who want to do something with this project. But then you would ask, like, where are the kids in this? We already said, like, in the first part, we do try to work with as much of kids as possible, but I don't see any kids, like, in management. Like, that doesn't sound that good, actually. So we thought of a good way to connect them. That's in the next slide. And that is this. We use children, like, for 5 different steps, like, for the analysis. So kids as radical questionnaires, like most of your students probably have experience from some 20 years ago. You're sitting in the back seat of your mom and dad's car and just annoying them all the time by asking the question, yes, but why? Like, why is that? And then he gives an answer, and then you ask, why is that? But it's actually a very good way to understand the topic, because you really go through the deepest layers, and at some point your parents just snap and say, I don't know why it's like this, it just is as it is. And that's the point where we try to make the next step, like, but why is it as it is? What can we do with that? So the yes plus why as children as radical questionnaires. Also children as facilitators. So they help us think of new innovative concepts, but they also help to implement them. Just like if you have like a parking spot transformation, that's one of the measures where we'll explain you a bit more about later. They're actually participating in making it happen. Also in the evaluation, we have like the scientific way of measuring if stuff works or not. But they will also say in the end, like if they like it or not. like you could make an excellent project. It could work on paper, but if the people who are going to use it don't actually like it, probably not going to be that effective. Also, the empowerment, children as motivators. So you have parents standing there, want to drive their kids everywhere, don't want to get rid of their cars because they love their cars. And if their kid tell them, ask them from dad, can I tomorrow cycle to school? They're much more likely to say yes to that kid than the school saying to them, you have to stop bringing your kids, you have to cycle them to school. And therefore we try to work on the knowledge of kids to let them think for themselves, what do they really want? And then let them ask their parents if they could make it happen. And then we are transferring the knowledge. Kids like to chat, they chat everywhere, they don't have any social anxiety quite often. And in that way, they're quite effectively able to spread information, especially to people who love them. They're quite intent to listen to them. So if we look at that with the project statement, so they don't work with management, but they work in work package 2, the involvement and analysis project. They are the basis of our innovative concept. They help us implement it. They work on capacity building. They also evaluate stuff and work on the communication. I think that's a pretty big part for kids in any research.
And before we go on, Nick, you were telling about the role of the children within this project. And you mentioned that they are not in the management role. And we have received a question, why aren't children in the management role of this project?
It's a very good question. Probably because kids are not very good with stuff that's going to happen in the future. Like if you have a deadline in 3 months and they have to make the planning, it probably wouldn't work. I think that's one of the answers I came up with right now.
So the project management for this project is more about making sure that each partner of the project is delivering what they need to deliver.
Yeah.
So the children will be involved in the project, but to make sure that everything will work out well and make it effective, the management is done by another, not by children, another partner.
And they make sure it moves very smooth, and that's like one of their biggest goals, and they're doing a great job at it. Okay, so now we're actually going to tell you, that was like how we do it. This is more like what we're doing. So we focus around 6 different topics. They're called our activity fields. So the intervention in public space, the temporary street closure, educational and innovative tools, the empowerment of active mobility, crystallization points, and planning procedures, and integration in some. Okay, here we have the first one, that's interventions in public space. Give me a quick sip. So the interventions in public space. So we work a lot with awareness. It's a self-measured project. So we also need people to think about what is the result of their actions in traffic or for their kids. So we work with hybrid zones. So you have locations that can have different functionalities, and that helps, especially like if streets, we organize festivals in streets. We also work a lot with transforming parking spots. So if there are not that many parking spots available at a school, people will need to find new solutions to bring their kids. And we do that, for example, with movable trees. As you see in the picture, you have a stand and you put a tree on it, and then you transform a parking spot to sort of a park, a green area. We also have examples of making coffee stands out of them, and then have an active discussion with the kids and the parents about what is the result of getting new ways for this school square or for this parking spot in front of this school. How can we work out different ways of land use? And then we have the temporary street closures. So just block off a street for some time, organize some activity on there. And it also makes people think, do we really need the street, or could we also use it for multi-purpose usage, like for a soccer game or for the gym lessons? And this is also to stimulate behavioral change, just to think of new ways of, do we really need it? Can we find new ways of how we bring our kids? Can we find new ways of transportation? Just to empower people and to change some stuff to help them to bring their kids to school by bike, for example.
Yes, and there are a few more activity fields which we would like to share with you. So this one is educational and innovative tools. So it's about developing new tools to integrate children within the project. And one nice example of this is the school scan. Yeah, many partners within the project have executed this measure. And it means that a project partner will go to a school and walk around with children through the neighborhood to collect the opinions of the children about the neighborhood. So in Tilburg, for instance, they did this with red and green cards. So whenever children really liked a part of the neighborhood, they had to show a green card and a photo would be made. And they did the same with red cards for parts which they didn't like about the neighborhood. And after walking around, all children came together, and also the municipality of Tilburg was involved. And the children had to share their opinions, show on a map where it was, what they did or didn't like. And the municipality was collecting all the information, and they were talking to their mobility expert to see if they could change it and make it a more child-friendly place. Another activity field, empowerment of active mobility. There's also a very nice example of this. It's called the school bus, and it means that one parent or teacher picks up the children at home before school starts by walking to all their houses. So it will be like a walking bus with all the children, and by picking them up on foot, the parents don't need a car to bring the children to school. So it's more sustainable and also fun for the children. And crystallization points. These are like meeting points for people where people can interact and improve their social skills. And one example of this is a public breakfast. So you close off a road for maybe one morning or one day, so no cars are allowed. And then you realize how much you can do with that space of the car. You can have breakfast on it, you can have a party, the children can play on the street. And people actually really like it. They are happy, you can see the children playing. So during the project we will do this more often and evaluate the effect of it, and of course share it with you. And last but not least, the integration into a SUMP, because many municipalities are working on SUMPs, Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan. And of course, this project also has to do a lot with sustainable mobility. So why not integrate it into the SUMP? And by integrating it, it will become easier to achieve more in the future, because it's already part of your SUMP. So in that way, designing child-friendly neighborhoods is no new topic in policy, but it can be included in already existing policy.
Yeah, but in the end, we have like a whole lot of activities happening in different cities, but it's just 7 cities implementing it. That's not going to change the whole of Europe, you would say. So therefore, it's really important to work on the second part of it. That's the capacity building to train other cities to do the same. We do quite some workshops about that. We'll tell you a bit about it more later, but we're also mainly focused on being a research project, like finding new ways to deal with this problem. And we're not that much an implementation project. Just 7 cities, not going to change it. But if you could scale up to different cities, that's going to have a huge impact on how we see and perceive cities for kids. So we do that in 4 steps. Like the first step is this little blue butterfly. The butterfly is our logo of this project. It's metamorphosis from the caterpillar, from a cocoon to a butterfly, spreading their wings and spreading happiness all over cities. But first, if you want to spread the knowledge, we as a consortium have to know what it's about and actually be able to tell more people about what we're doing, like we do now. But we also want to scale up to the next level, and that's your stakeholders in a city. So we already work quite a lot with end users, but we also organize several workshops with different stakeholders. One of them will be this Monday in Tilburg, for example. We do that with different levels of involvement, like On Monday, it will be mostly focused around governmental organizations. The next step will be participants in neighborhoods, and the last step will be different stakeholders in different city. And that also brings us to the next slide. That's capacity building at city level, at higher city level. So we try to involve other municipalities to come to our workshops, to educate them about this, to tell them more about it, get their thoughts about it, learn from them, they can learn from us, to have many cities doing the same stuff at the same time. And if many cities in Europe do that, you could eventually conquer the entire of Europe with metamorphosis measures. And that's the goal. I think the European Union would very much like that to achieve it. And we're doing quite a lot of that to make that actually happen. One of them is this webinar in 3 different time zones.
Yes, we're getting to the end of the webinar, but first, there is some more room for discussion. So we will do it just like the first time. We will ask you a question. You can answer via the chat box or the Q&A. So universities, please ask your students. The first question, do you feel like we should pay more attention to redesigning child-friendly neighborhoods? And of course, you can also share some good examples of a child-friendly neighborhood, or tell us why we should or shouldn't pay more attention to it.
Yeah, especially the examples could be very interesting.
Yeah. So please take a few minutes to write down your answers. And if you would like to know more about good examples of how to redesign a child-friendly neighborhood, please visit our website. It's metamorphosisproject.eu. So make sure you visit this website. And meanwhile, we will ask you, Nick, what is a bad example of a child-friendly neighborhood?
A bad example of child-unfriendly, like a good example of a child-unfriendly neighborhood.
Yes.
Rephrase it like
so
that.
what don't we want to see?
If I look back at my primary school period, like we have a big street in front of our school, and there are some, like it was always full, like cars parking everywhere, and there happening accidents like every week. Not very big ones, but just bumpers touching other bumpers. It was too close. It was too small actually to facilitate the amount of traffic that all the brings to school generated. So I think that happens in quite a lot of schools. And it also involves in quite dangerous situations. And we also had kids going by bike to school, but then the infrastructure wasn't ready for it. I actually had a classmate hit by a car one time. After that, the municipality really needed to change infrastructure over there, and after that, it didn't happen anymore. So I think there's quite some possibilities to find better ways, and also to give our kids safe options to cycle to school. And for parents, they're so afraid of traffic, which is very understandable, because it's also probably the biggest risk of kids letting the kids cycle to school. So I think we can actually make a big win over there.
I hope so. I hope so. In 10 years, we might ask ourselves the question: how could we ever do it this way? That our children walk in the next to the cars, dangerous situations.
Yeah.
So that's also why the timing of this project is very important. We really need to take action now, because if we don't do it now, it will affect our children in a bad way.
Yeah, especially if you look at a lot of infrastructure, it's built for several generations. So if you start changing it now, people will benefit for it for decades.
Yeah, it's very important. And let's see if some answers are coming in. Let's check the chat for a minute. So John, thank you for sharing. One good and one bad example. The good one is, let's see, schools with road closures at opening and closing times. And a bad example is schools in air quality management areas. So there you can see the effect on car usage and so on motorized vehicles on air quality. It's a clear link. A good example, but also a solution, let them walk. Well, that would be nice. I hope we can achieve it, that all children can walk to school.
Yeah, but I think the biggest win is there, letting parents feel okay with letting their kids walk to school, and therefore the infrastructure needs to be safe as well. So that's like something we could really do with this project, like letting parents feel, okay, it's safe, I can let my kid walk to school, I can let him cycle to school. So child-friendly routes is a very important one in this matter. That's also why for Tilburg we did GPS trackers. We gave a whole lot of kids GPS trackers, so we actually have a map of the kids' routes in a city. And there's so much very interesting data in it. It's one of our innovative tools and concepts.
Yeah. So for instance, you could see that many children, that their daily activities are within the neighborhood. So their friends live close to school, so they could walk there, but not all of them do. They could cycle to school with their parents, but not all of them do. So there you can clearly see where you can influence the children and their parents, of course.
Yeah, I have also a very interesting graph over here of a very child-oriented neighborhood. So you have a whole lot of housing in the middle of parking space and one direction street going around them and a school close by. This is one of the examples of building facilities for kids in one location so they can actually go there by themselves and give walking routes over there a bigger priority over car-oriented planning. Thank you.
And just one more answer before we go on to the end of the presentation or the webinar. One of the reactions from India was that it's a new topic. So they, it's very new and it's of course difficult if it's a new topic. So make sure that you follow our social media and the website to learn more about the project. And if you still have got answers, you can still submit them. We will collect them even though the webinar is ending. And I don't think there's time to answer this question, but please think about it. What could be the most challenging part in designing child-friendly neighborhoods? And of course, you can still share it with us via email or via the website. One last question. What would you like to learn in the next webinars? Because there will be a few more, also about the Metamorphosis project. But we want you to share with us what you would like to hear about. Maybe about the difficult part of designing a child-friendly neighborhood, maybe more about the activity fields. So please let us know.
Yeah, because right now we're planning to do them mostly about activity fields to really go into the deeper knowledge of it. But if you guys have a really excellent idea of from the attendees, we hear like a topic that comes up a lot, we will happily dedicate an entire webinar to it. So this is about the end of this presentation. This is our first pilot webinar, so it's quite a premiere. It's actually the first big webinar all over BUAS. So thank you all for being here. We're also, on the sheet we have like our logos, the butterfly. It's funded by Civitas and the European Union, the Horizon 2020 project, with a whole lot of overcoupling projects to work on making better cities. And you can also find us like on our website for more information, our LinkedIn page, the Facebook page, which is posted up almost daily, thanks to our Italian partners, and our Instagram feed, which is actually pretty good. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you, and you will soon receive a link to the recording of this webinar, so you could replay it and learn more about the project. And
this also includes like the entire presentation, the sources, and a small questionnaire on how you like this project.
And we won't quit the webinar yet, but we will close the video, so you can still submit your answers and information for the next webinars. And we, of course, we will mute ourselves. So thank you all once again, and hope to see you in the next webinar.